Howdy folks, and welcome back to Constantine's adventure. Last we left her, she was awakened from a rather weird dream regarding her new werewolf abilities. We have no time to wait though. She's been given an assignment from Ayla to go hunt down a Silverhand leader and obtain their plans. The location is just north of Whiterun, so it's time to strap on the sword and bow and get moving. Constantine gets a sense of her surroundings quickly. The air is nice and brisk, and it's relatively early in the morning. She knows she's hurting on a few arrow supplies though. While she can always count on her ethereal arrows in case she runs out, it's ideal to have physical ones as a frontline offense. She heads towards War Maidens to borrow their forge and make herself some new arrows. Having just learned how to fashion and work with orichalcum, she thinks she's going to make some orcish arrows. Steel and iron are good, but they just don't pack the same amount of blunt force trauma an orcish arrow does. She makes a few packs, bringing her total to around 80 arrows. That should honestly be enough to deal with a few lowly Silverhand outpost members. As she was leaving Whiterun, she passed by the local Khajiit caravan. They aren't allowed in the city walls on account of some prejudice that they might steal things, but Constantine has found the caravans to be quite kind and always willing to trade fairly. It also does help her cause a little bit in the fact that they don't particularly care what body a sword or shield may have come from. They just take it anyways, so they're a good sort of fence in that regard. Continuing on her travels, she comes across a rather interesting orc. He apparently is a master in unarmed combat and sells a bunch of important spellbooks. Now, most of his stock she has no use of, but many of the spells are the same sort of oakskin spell she currently uses, except that he has the highest rated armor spellbook, that being Dragonhide. It's expensive, but if she sits down to really study it, it could save her life. She buys it promptly, thanks the orc, and moves on. She keeps it in the back of her mind that she'll need to start studying that book at her earliest convenience. She walks through the plains of Whiterun and marvels at the beauty of the world around her. Yes, it's raining, but that early morning fog, as it covers the land, is truly a sight to behold, and the rays of sunlight that streak through are something she wouldn't want to miss for the world. Yes, she does live a dangerous life, always on the move, always searching for the next bounty or assignment, but it's nice to just take in your surroundings every once in a while. Well, enough reminiscing about the weather. She may be able to have stretched her legs for a bit, but she hasn't been able to get in her morning shots. Thankfully, these poachers are around and are just asking to be sent to Sovngarde. Nothing like a little morning practice to get yourself really going. After cleaning up her mess and continuing on the snowy mountaintops, she came across a door. Now, usually she would ignore the door. She, of course, had a mission, but the call of adventure was just too much for her. The architecture was clearly Dwemer in nature. Now, this would be the first time Constantine had ever set foot in a Dwemer ruin before. She had seen them dot the landscape all over, but she had never actually entered one. This would be an interesting find and a more interesting adventure in general. There were large dwarven metal pipes everywhere, and hard rock encompassed her fully. She had no idea what to expect, so she stayed on guard, bow drawn. Her first foray into the Dwemer ruins and her welcoming committee was a weird dwarven automaton. It was living metal powered by lightning that attacked immediately on sight. Unsure of what this new threat brought to the table, she did notice the contents she could scavenge from the automatons were bountiful and could potentially hold great value to collectors or be smelted down and sold as ingots. The first entry point appeared to be barred, but then she came across a body on the ground, and next to it was a knapsack. Looking through the knapsack, she came across a note, presumably from the dead man's leader, about a special sword. Now, this is the sort of thing Constantine was looking for. Ancient Dwemer city and a rare sword to boot. She put the note away. The silver hand could definitely wait on this one. First, she's looking around for the dynamo core that the note spoke of. It seemed that it's the key to getting further in. She noticed it around some air that shimmered. So she walks in, picks it up, and immediately notices she's starting to cough and feel awful. Oh no, that's poison. She couldn't tell what type of poison it was, but she only knew that it was. She downs health potions and uses restoration magic as a way to consistently try to purge it from her system. She doesn't have any cure poison potions on her. A rookie mistake, a stupid mistake, she thought to herself. She would need to get some next time she's in town. You cannot go out adventuring without some of these potions. She can hear her heart beating harder and harder as the poison courses through her body, but thankfully, her efforts with her restoration magic were able to finally purge the last of it from her body. She'd have to move more carefully and look out for any more shimmering air as she delves deeper and deeper into the dungeon. She had steadied herself and gone further into the dungeon when more of the weird spider automatons came jumping from the wall to attack her. So that's great. Now she needs to look out for the actual walls. They appear easy enough, but deep down she knows that there's bound to be something so much worse. She's not fully ready and she doesn't know what to expect. All she knows is she needs to be on guard lest she catch a stray lightning bolt, so to speak. Having solved a quick puzzle, the bars to the next room lift and she carefully proceeds in. Now this is where she meets her next opponent. The bipedal Dwemer automatons. They seem like they are going to pack much more of a punch if she's not careful. Thankfully, and much to Constantine's chagrin though, the bipedal constructs are just as susceptible to arrow attacks as their spider counterparts. Assuming she makes it out of here alive, she'll need to head to more dwarven ruins. The amount of scrap that she's been able to pick up is incredibly useful, and looking at it, she thinks that she should be able to smelt it down into ingots. She should be able to make a decent bit of money that way. Obviously, of course, that means having to delve into more Dwemer ruins, but the payout is absolutely worth it. She looted the rest of the room, and nothing much of note outside of a few more Dwemer scraps and a few books that she was going to be able to send off to Orion to fill out the museum's library. Not one to waste a closed door, she opens to what was most likely a Dwemer bedroom of sorts. When she opens the door, though, she sees bodies, and fresh ones at that. She's no idiot. She knows now that even if there's nothing immediately present, the walls hide secrets. And as if on cue, a dwarven sphere escapes from the wall to claim another victim. Thankfully, Constantine was very aware of this and denied the Guardian's desire for blood. If they have desires at all. The room held nothing of note, minus a few trinkets she'd be able to sell. It was now time to head further into the ruins as she figures out where the core is supposed to go. And, more importantly, what it's supposed to unlock. As she continued farther into the ruins, Constantine had to admit to herself that, while dangerous, she was enjoying it. It had been a while since she had just sort of explored. Mercenary work didn't really leave a lot of room for free exploration. Through the next door, she comes across an open space. A bridge connects to another location, and down below she sees people. They have to be clearly part of the original explorer group, but they also look heavily armed. Constantine reasons it's easier to shoot first and ask questions later. Her first shot didn't drop the guy like she originally thought, but now she needs to make quick work of the rest of the group lest she be overwhelmed. Annoyingly, a few missed shots as she tried to get the range and speed down, but she was able to pick them off cleanly enough. Now a quick loot fest, and she'd move on to the next section in the ruins. After a search of the camp, she was able to find the receptacle for the orb she had found. Honestly, how sad that they were just so close to it, and yet so far. Shouldn't give it much more thought than that, though, as their loss is her gain. Upon entering the next room, she's immediately set on by the bipedal denizens. She wasn't given too much reaction time, but a few well-placed arrows tend to do the trick. Whatever the sword is, she's confident she's getting closer to where it's hidden. The increasing quantity and difficulty of the automatons is ramping up. Whatever it was that they're protecting, she's sure it's going to be worth her while. The extra target practice is something she's loving as well. The bond between her and Ulf grows with every encounter, and she's honestly just not sure why she hadn't gotten a partner yet. She may have to go back to that weird seed house and ask the wood elf to join her. An extra bow would always be useful. The storerooms here are massive. She's going to make a small fortune off these ingots she'll make. The money will be easily able to go towards having masters teach her different crafts. Now, the accumulation of money to Constantine is important, but it's not the end-all be-all. The more she accumulates, the more she can pay people to teach her these things that would honestly just take her longer to learn on her own. While thinking to herself, though, she stupidly steps into more poison. Thankfully, she knows what she needs to do, and just downing health potions and using her restoration magic to forcibly purge the poison from her body. After purging the poison, she hears more noises down below, and, as expected, she finds another automaton. She takes it out, and after taking a second to take in her surroundings, though, she notices two incredibly large automatons. Unsure if they'll attack at the same time, and not fully confident in her sneak abilities against a machine, she fires an arrow at the first, waking it. She fires arrow after arrow with panic starting to set in. They aren't being staggered by the arrow's impact, and they just keep walking towards her. The fear of death starts to loom closer and closer. She sprints up the railway to get a better vantage point, and not to be in its way. Unsure what damage it could cause, it struggles to walk up the ramp, but she's in place of range of its attack, and she could feel the hot steam sear her body. In a fit of panic, she downs an emergency health potion she keeps on her side in the hope that it will fight the burning sensation. Ulf keeps the automaton busy just long enough for her to desperately shoot an arrow between some of the armor plates, and hitting, most likely, a vital piece, killing the machine. She breathes a sigh of relief, but the burning is still prevalent. She quickly uses her healing magic and potion to ease the burns and regain some stamina. The cooling magic flows over her as she readies herself for the second automaton. She has a better understanding of where she needs to hit and what to expect from the second automaton. She readies her bow and lets the arrow fly. This one was easier to down. Either its armor was somehow weaker, or she was able to hit it in its more vulnerable spots. It, unlike its companion, did not even get to take a sweep at her, thankfully enough. She puts it down and loots the machine, finding more precious items that she'll be able to smelt down and sell. She continues to make her way through the ruins with little fanfare and nothing new. A few automatons here and there, and scrap that she'll pick up for later. It wasn't until she was overburdened that she found out that Ulf is more than just your normal dog. He has some semblance of magic? Or was enchanted by his prior owner somehow. Ulf is able to carry some of her items by opening a sort of pocket dimension? I don't know if he knows how to do it on request or he has to be commanded to. Either way, this is a huge increase to her ability to hold stuff. Ulf is just such a good boy. Having trekked through the ruins, she found the key to the actual armory. Now, apparently the orb she found at the beginning was the key to the storehouse, and in the storehouse, she found the real key to where the sword would be. These Dwemer did not make it easy to rob them, and honestly, just not super kind of them if she's being honest. So, she backtracks and uses the key to enter the location for where the sword is most likely being housed. As she entered, she noticed the air was stale. Nobody had walked these halls for years, centuries even. This is the first time that door had been opened in gods know how long. And down Constantine's spine, she feels it. Fear. Palpable, honest fear. The fear you feel as a child when you look upon a wolf charging you down. The fear you feel when you know the next move you make will signal your death. As she shoots her way through, every fiber in her body is telling her to run, turn around and walk away. Whatever's deeper down there is not worth it. And yet, she continues. She will not die with scars on her back. Opening the door, she knows this is it. This is the room where the sword is. She can feel it, though she hasn't laid eyes on it. There are a few guards around the room and lots of loot. So, she gets to work. She shoots and loots her way through the room, taking out any automaton and stuffing whatever is semi-valuable into her bag. Many of the items will be for the museum, but others will be smelted down and sold. Upon finishing, she comes to the hallway where she knows her final encounter will be. Whatever is down this hallway is not only dangerous, but holds with it the sword she's been so painstakingly looking for. As she nears it, though, a vision flashes through her brain. Her death, over and over and over again. Unsure of what gave this premonition, all she knows is it's time to be very, very careful. She turns a corner and sees a massive automaton. Shooting it, her instincts kick in immediately, and she gets out. This thing is dangerous. Probably the most dangerous thing she has faced to date. It spews fire, the same fire she saw in her vision. If she's touched by that flame, she will die. The thing is big and will mercilessly hunt her down unless she can do something, anything. Maybe she can wedge it between a door frame. It's big. Bulky, but it might not be able to fit. That's a good start. She lures it through the first door, hoping maybe it'll work, but it walks through easily. The door was just made for its height. Thankfully, she had seen the smaller door on her way in. There's no way that a behemoth that size will be able to walk through the door, right? Her gamble paid off. It wasn't able to fit through the door. She could keep it there, wedged, while she battered it with arrow after arrow. It wasn't the most honorable way to kill it, but it wasn't alive, and she was, so really, who cares about honor? All she needed to do was make sure she wasn't hit by any of the stray flame, and she'd be golden. This game of cat and mouse went on for minute after agonizing minute. The sweat dripping from Constantine's brow due to the heat of the flame kept getting in her eye, throwing off her aim. She had to hit the automaton over and over and over. It only had to hit her once. But finally, with enough arrows, enough patience, it finally stopped. she had won. She stood there, admiring her foe, now just a clump of unmoving metal. She waited for the flames to die down. The worst thing that could happen is burning alive right after killing it. With the fire finally out, she walked towards her now dead adversary and grabs the sword she had been looking for. It was a fine weapon, and, on closer inspection, she noticed it was a double enchanted weapon, a difficult feat, one she's actually trying to learn herself, but has failed multiple times. She took it and gave it a few practice swings. It felt good, it had a nice weight to it. She looted the rest of the room as she was able, and finally left the ruins, ready to continue on her original mission of dealing with the Silver Hand. Finally outside, it was the evening, and she was hungry, thirsty, and exhausted. The chances of Silver Hand moving bases was slim, so she thought the best thing to do right now would be to set up her camp. She needed to eat and get some much-needed rest. She had found a nice flat surface outside the ruin, but was interrupted by a courier. She now fully believes they use some semblance of magic and will go to the ends of Nirn to figure out how they track her so quickly.
Looks like that's it.
He did hand her a note from a Calcelmo in Markarth. He found out that she had come into possession of a dwarven centurion corps. Constantine starts to think that maybe the group in the ruins were contracted by that guy? If that's the case, he clearly gives no damn about his employees and really just wants the core. Probably willing to pay a good amount for it as well. Having finally laid down and taken her boots off, she goes over a few notes that she had in her pack, but quickly stuffs them away, and finally passes out for the night. Having now finally woken up, it's time for her to break camp and continue forward on her original mission to go to the Silver Hand Fort and obtain those plans. First things first, though, gotta start the day off with a good meal. The courier was still hanging about, which worried her, but, she just let it slide for the time being. If he followed her some more, maybe she might find out how they use that magic a little earlier. After finally breaking camp, she orients herself to her environment and heads out with Ulf to achieve the goal that was set out for her. Not sure what she's going to find outside of a bunch of Silver Hand members, although she is kind of excited to potentially use this new sword on them. It looks like it'll cut just straight through the flesh. While traveling through the snow-covered lands, she did come across an old Nordic ruin. She had already worked through a Dwemer ruin, so what's a few Draugr? Except for the fact that there were no Draugr, and instead she was attacked by ice wraiths. Now, she had never actually encountered them before, and oh my gosh, wow, they hurt. Her sword seemed to go right through them. Her only real hope of surviving this was through a couple of well-placed bow shots. She took a gamble and was right. The head is where a majority of the damage will be caused. While she only really had iron arrows, the force of the arrow and added electricity damage was all she needed to put the wraiths down. She did make a mental note not to attack wraiths unless required, but they also had some really nice ingredients on them, so she'll see. She headed back to the ruin, taking a few objects as I mean, who else was going to need them? And she also ended up taking a blessing of Talos. She knew the worship of Talos is illegal due to the Thalmor, but A, screw the Thalmor, and B, if the Daedric princes were real, as seen through Clavicus Vial, then the Aedra had to be real, and getting any extra support is nice. She's not devoted to any Aedra, but she also won't say no to any extra divine assistance. She had found a key, but upon looking around was actually able to find where it went. She'll jot it down later in her journal as a good reminder. The rest of her journey was uneventful until she crested a hill and was coming down the slope. This appears to be the fort marked on her map where the Silver Hand members are hiding out. More importantly, the plans she's looking for to take should be somewhere around here. Getting closer, she gets a better idea of her surroundings and where the enemies are. She pulled back the bowstring and let the arrows fly as they find their first marks. Time to send a few souls to Sovngarde. Ulf is incredibly useful here. The idiots on the wall are more focused on the dog with no range than the archer. Though Constantine is sure that the shadow of the mountain behind her is obscuring their ability to see her, but she's not going to look that gift horse in the mouth. Ulf, for his efforts, is taking a little bit of damage, but is weaving around the majority of the arrows. The hand members scout wise and came off the battlements, though they're already pretty weakened by Constantine's arrows. All it took was a few more shots, and the outside of the fort was cleared. After a quick loot fest, she found a smelter the Silver Hand had been using. She thought now was as good a time as any to smelt down all the dwarven scrap metal into ingots. Those ingots would then be able to be used to make a good bit of coin. Now remember, she doesn't really have any intention of using these ingots to make anything, as she doesn't actually know how to make anything dwarven. Now that being the case, though, she is going to use all that money she makes to help with her training. She enters the fort crouched and ready for anything, but it seems the hand members hadn't heard the commotion outside. This was good. She opens fire, and this had to be the dumbest group of people that she has ever killed.
Victory is yours. I submit. No more.
What was that?
They had no idea where she was. Her ability to sneak isn't fantastic. It's not poor, but it's not great. And they just couldn't see her? Ah. She chuckles to herself as she loots the interior of the fort, while also finding the requested Silver Hand plans. Plans acquired and weight redistributed, Constantine now has to make the journey back to Whiterun. Considering she already slew everything in her way, the hope is that the trek back to Whiterun should be pretty quick and easy. This was not the case, as Constantine came upon a giant camp. She felt she was stronger now and wanted to see if she was capable of actually taking down a giant. She chooses her arrows and pulls back the bow, when she notices that she is now about to be attacked by something else. From the look of it, it looks like it's a bunch of Silver Hand members hunting her down. Alright, well, time for her to put down a few more dogs. It was just a small party. Constantine assumed that they had come from somewhere else and saw the state of the fort and just sort of tracked her. This idea was not the case. No, a bounty was placed on her by the Silver Hand higher-ups. Constantine was pissed. Nobody places a bounty on her and gets away with it. The few who have tried, they're all dead. Hopefully through Ayla, she'll be able to find the heads of the Silver Hand and wipe them clean. She did still want to take a crack at the giant camp, though, to get a kind of a real measure of her strength. So, with the help of Ulf, that's exactly what she did. The giant was definitely bulky, but he did seem to be marginally affected by her arrows. She next wanted to try out some of her poisons. Magic lightning arrows are solid, but nothing beats a debilitating poison. An art that she really does want to get better at. Ulf is an absolute powerhouse of a dog. He took that hit like it was nobody's business. Truly the best companion Constantine could ask for. A final arrow took out the giant, and she had a clear view of the loot. She was incredibly proud of herself. Giants are not an easy target to take down, but the fact that she was able to proves that she's making strides in her abilities. She heats up by the fire to expel the cold that had set into her armor. Cyrodiil had its fair share of cold weather, but geez, Skyrim's cold is a whole different beast. A quick lockpick and loot, and she also jots down different markings and what the camp sort of looked like for Aryan. He seemed keen in building replicas of giant camps within the museum. As she traveled on, she knew she was getting closer to Whiterun, but she came across a rather odd sight. First off, there was a stuck cart in the middle of the road with a strange-looking man near it. She would go see him later. She was first curious if the owners of the land knew he was there. But when she walked up, they appeared to be in some form of verbal altercation, and Constantine knew better than to intervene. So she went back down to go check on the strange man. What she saw was just weird, and what she heard was stranger. First off, the man was in a jester's outfit, and he spoke in the third person, calling himself Cicero, a name she had never heard before. He also mentioned needing to bring his mother's corpse to her new burial ground. His whole feeling was weird, and her feeling about him was just off. But she did offer to help. He had a dead mother, and the least she could do was see if she could assist.
Oh, yes! Yes, the kindly stranger can certainly help. Go to the farm, the Lorius farm, just over there off
His
the road.
request was rather simple. All he wanted was for her to go talk to the farmer on the hill and ask him if he would help out the strange man with his cart by fixing the wheel. He was even offering to pay her to do so, and she wasn't going to turn down money for such a simple task.
Will reward you with coin, gleamy, shiny coin.
He was still a little weird, though. Walking up to the farmer, he is not pleased about us being there, and frankly, quite pissed about the weird jester asking for help.
Crazy fool's already asked me about 5 times. Seems he's not satisfied with my answer. Why can't he just leave us alone? Pay me? You think this is about money? Have you seen the man? He's completely out of his head. A jester here in Skyrim? Ain't been a merry man in these parts for 100 years. And he's transporting some giant box. Says it's a coffin, and he's going to bury his mother. Mother, my eye. You could have anything in there. War contraband, weapons, skooma. Ain't no way I'm getting involved in any of that. What? And just who in Mara's name are you, anyway? Come here, telling me my business. And for what? To help a fool? Look, Yes, you're right. Feller might be nutters, might not. But fact is, he needs help. I turned him away. What kind of a man am I, huh? Look, thanks. And I'm sorry
Constantine
for my
appeals to the
unneighborly
man's
action.
better
Talk
judgment.
to Cicero.
Keep in
Be
mind,
sure to tell
not
him
because
I'll be
she
downtown
doesn't
soon.
think he may be right about him being very strange, but because she gets paid if he helps.
Poor mother! You did? He has? Oh, stranger! You have made Cicero so happy, so jubilant and ecstatic.
A quick jaunt back to Cicero, and we let him know that the farmer is willing to help him out. He gets a little too excited to hear that, but he does pay her 400 gold coins. She appreciates the gesture and goes on her way, trying to forget the strange little man and his incredibly large coffin. As Constantine neared Whiterun, she realized she had never actually arrived from this direction before. She found a small bandit hideout at the base of the city where Dragon's Reach was, and while she wasn't paid to kill the bandits, them being this close to a city is just not a great thing. Plus, she would just take her payment from the dead bandits anyways.
Someone there?
There are only 2 bandits, but this place clearly housed more than just 2. So where the heck were the rest? Easy kills, so she went about looting the camp. Annoyingly, there was really nothing of value minus a few trinkets. While she was looting, though, the rest of the bandit group must have showed up and probably just came back from some sort of raid. Seeing as how they caught Constantine red-handed taking their ill-gotten gains, it was only the right and polite thing to put them down. In the fray of combat, 2 Vigilants of Stendar almost came out of nowhere to assist her. She really didn't need the help, but it was nice to have a meat shield so that the fire spell wasn't directed at her. The Vigilants were pretty
that magic
snarky
away
and
from
rude.
me.
Constantine was starting to think that the one-off interaction she had may be more of a whole group ideology. She also isn't going to tell them that she has already cavorted with Daedra by speaking with Clavicus Vile. While she could absolutely take them in a fight right here, right now, they are too close to the city walls, and whether she likes it or not, the Vigilants of Stendar do have the people's respect. So slaughtering them in front of the city walls seems like just a bad idea for her reputation. Back in Whiterun proper, there are a few errands that Constantine's going to need to run prior to heading back out. The first, of course, being sending off any new relics to Arian. It's so nice that Arian pays the driver on delivery. A, that means Constantine doesn't have to. And B, with the reputation the museum is gaining, more drivers seem to be willing to trek up to Solitude. Constantine has to once again marvel at Ulf's magic ability to hold on to items for her in his little pocket dimension, as it allows her to carry more things and, of course, send more stuff off to Aryan. Whiterun. Constantine adores Whiterun. Of the major cities she's visited, Whiterun is probably her favorite, and she hopes to get a permanent residence here soon enough, though she is unsure of how to do that just yet. She has two main errands she wants to run. The first is using the enchanting table in Dragon's Reach, and the second is having Yorlin show her more smithing techniques. She did quickly pass by the bounty board to see if there are any interesting jobs, but nothing immediately catches her eye, so she moved on. Back in Dragon's Reach, she heads to the enchanting table. So she has two goals in mind regarding enchanting. The first is to simply disenchant a bunch of items she has on her to learn those enchantments. But also, she wants to enchant a few items to increase her ability, but also just has some stuff to sell off for a little bit of extra coin. She has learned, though, that it's feasibly possible to put two enchantments on one item. Obviously, of course, she sort of saw this from the sword she picked up. But she's heard that it's actually possible to learn an enchantment of an item without it breaking. Now, she doesn't fully believe that yet. She does need to do quite a bit more studying, but if this is possible, if you can actually disenchant an item without it breaking, she thinks that there's some powerful, unique enchantments in the world made by absolute masters of the craft, probably more likely Daedra, and she hopes to learn those enchants without actually breaking the item. The power, as well as the actual financial power that comes from that ability, beautiful. Having finished her enchanting spree, she heads down to Belethor's to sell off the trinkets she's enchanted, as well as any other small little things that she picked up in the ruins and otherwise. She likes Belethor. He takes everything and asks no question. He can somehow sniff a stolen item from a mile away, so he chooses not to work as a fence, which is frustrating. But she does hope to one day persuade him to potentially take up that field as well. Now, keep in mind she's not necessarily planning on robbing everyone blind, but it does help to create a network if you come into possession of certain items. It's good practice, just in case. With that little errand taken care of, the last thing she wants to get done is for Yorlin to continue teaching her how to shape different metals. He knows a lot more than he lets on. He talks about his Skyforged steel, but this man, he hides a lot of his knowledge. He does, though, have a ravenous need for dwarven ingots. And, realistically, what Smith doesn't. They are incredibly hard to find, and to make them you have to delve into Dwemer ruins, which, as Constantine now knows, is incredibly dangerous. He happily trades for them with good coin, and she turns around giving it right back to him so he can show her more techniques. Her current hope is that she'll be able to learn how to make and work with ebony soon, but her understanding of how the metal interlocks with other metals and bonds is still pretty lackluster. As her reputation grows, she feels she needs to start making herself more identifiable. The elvish armor she currently wears is great, but she looks more like she's a mercenary that works for the Thalmor rather than anything else. She hopes the ebony look, as it's incredibly rare to see anybody wearing it, will make her stick out more and people will come want her services. When she starts to train her ability in using heavy armor, she's hoping she'll be able to incorporate ebony in some way so as to keep her recognizable. Constantine, having finished with all her errands, finally returns to Ayla to turn in the Silverhand plans. She was impressed, but she also wasn't just lying around waiting for a return. She snooped around and found one of the Silverhand leaders, and is requesting now that we assassinate them. Without missing a beat, Constantine accepts. Of course, for the death of Skjor, but more importantly, this may be the leader that put the hit out on her, and as Constantine's rules state, nobody puts a hit out on Constantine and gets away with it. She also recognizes her need to rest and recoup. She had fallen a little on her study time, so she pulled out the books in her bag and looked through them, choosing which one she wanted to continue studying. Ultimately, she chose to start working through Dragonhide. She reasons that more survivability is paramount to being successful. A long study break over, she started to understand the basic properties. Now, oak flesh simply increases the toughness of her armor, while Dragonhide will actually impact her physiology. Now, the actual mechanics she hasn't quite got down, so she'll need to continue her studies. For now, though, she is tired, hungry, and thirsty. So it's time to handle those needs.
I was the newest companion until you came along. I guess that's okay. Just means I can show you the ropes.
After a well-needed sleep, she wakes up and eats breakfast. She's now got a silver hand leader she's got to take out. As she leaves Dorvasker, she checks her map where Ayla marked it for her. She has to head to a Lost Knife hideout. It's a bit of a trek from Whiterun, and she doesn't really want to get sidetracked like she did last time. The assassination of this leader is just too important, because again, nobody puts a hit on Constantine and gets away with it. She does notice a town called Iverstead is relatively close by. She decides to go talk with the stagecoach driver and see if they're able and willing to bring her there. Just before she leaves the city, a rather interesting-looking priest of Arkay, known as Anders, speaks to her. First, he asks if she is acquainted with the god of death. Of course she is. I mean, look at her. Now, look, she's no devotee of Arkay. Arkay is too morally just for her liking. He is pleased to hear this, and then requests her aid in finding his amulet of Arkay. The amulet gives him his powers somehow, and Constantine's confused. She could probably just go buy an amulet of Arkay from Bellathor, but it seems this one may be different. Who knows? She accepts to help, as he seems desperate and very willing to pay.
Without that amulet, I'm powerless to confront them. Would you be willing to search for it? I'll just wait here and make sure nothing foul escapes the catacombs.
She'll handle that issue later, next time she's in Whiterun. She's interested to see this alleged powerful amulet that's potentially different from all the others. Again, turning to leave, when out of nowhere she hears a call of pain, and then immediately a naked man running with another closed man close behind. Unsure of who the immediate aggressor was, she chose to fire at the closed man. She seemed to be correct, as he actually turned out to be a thief. Though not just any thief. This is a thief with ties to the Thieves Guild, just based on his armor. Constantine curses to herself. She should have captured him rather than killed him. He could have told her where to find him.
Cut butter.
Finally, with no other distractions, she speaks to the coach driver, and he is absolutely willing to take her to Iverstead. She thanks him, pays the fee, and hops on.
See ya.
Iverstead's a nice, quaint little town. It reminds her a little bit of her home in Cyrodiil. She'll want to explore this place later on and talk to some of the locals. You truly never know what they might have for you. But she has no time for that right now. Right now, she needs to head to Lost Knife Hideout and take out some of them Silver Hand members. Plus, their leader. When leaving the town, though, she came across a rogue green ice atronach. Green? No questions. She just killed it immediately. A quick look, and she actually recognizes the material. It's not green ice, it's malachite. somehow someone was able to create an Atronach from metal. She hopes to maybe one day find this individual, as that would be an incredibly useful skill to have. The rest of her trek is relatively uneventful, and she finds herself at the mouth of the cave's hideout. Without a second thought, she enters into the den, ready to exterminate every single hand member. They didn't clock or enter. This is good. She has her bow at the ready and handles the first two members, and they drop like flies. She laughs to herself. These cannot be the same hand members that trained under the Skinner who killed Skior. One of them got caught on a rock, and neither even recognized where they were being attacked from. Nothing too much of value on the bodies minus a key, so she'll take that and move on. Constantine finds herself in a massive cistern with enemies above and in front of her. There's just no real sneaky way of going about this, so she opens fire and will deal with what comes next. She's good at thinking on her feet like that. Once she recognizes it, the mage is the primary target. They're out in front and can deal the most damage the quickest. They go down actually pretty easily. She charred the remaining hand member to a little itty-bitty crisp, and then heals up. She took a hit or two, but it was nothing too substantial. She still hasn't gotten a good target on any of the individuals on the ramparts, and that makes her nervous. They've got the high ground, allowing them easier shots at her, and her retaliatory ones being much more difficult. She was, finally, able to spot them, and she got the first shot off. A bow fight to the death began. Or it would have been if the hand members were competent at all at using a bow. She swears they just picked up the bow for the first time. They didn't even get a shot off on her. They were an absolute disgrace to the art of archery, and taking them out was a mercy to the craft. One member thought they were being sly by faking a yield. Too bad Constantine doesn't take any prisoners.
Someone there?
Huh, a tripwire. Constantine thinks she'll be able to use that. At this point, several of the other hand members have figured out something's wrong, but haven't quite found Constantine yet. She's gonna see if she can lure them into a little trap.
I'd die for that. Won't get away with that. Where are you? Kill you! You're dead. You hear me? Dead!
That was disappointing. The trap didn't work, so she'll just kill him the old-fashioned way. One of them had a good deal of loot on him, and she took it all before heading deeper into the hideout. When she entered the room, rather than going in bow blazing, the hand members were talking. She thought by listening to them, they might give her some ideas as what she's about to face. According to the members, the leader is currently heavily drunk. This is good. Drunk people make easier targets. Now that she's got some information, it was time to make some pincushions.
Die for that. No! I'll kill you!
How? Are they blind? Did the electricity fry their brains? Honestly, Constantine doesn't even care. They're just easy targets. That sounded like an old woman's scream. Did Constantine just killed an elder lady? Look, silver hand member is silver hand member to her, so it doesn't matter, but... Oof. Having dealt with this first group of, frankly, completely incompetent hand members, she looted what she could and headed into what the other members called the Hole. She needed to be careful, though. Who knew how many people there were waiting for her? The first offender went down quickly enough. The concern is that others may have heard or seen it. In the background, Constantine can hear the leader being quite loud and belligerent. Best bet is to wipe out the rest of the hand members first and leave him for last. That third death is what spurred the rest of the group. Now Constantine needs to be on her guard as more members were going to start searching for her. That would be the case if they were at least moderately competent.
Going to enjoy killing you.
Ulf does good work dealing small amounts of damage and keeping the target off her. His distractions allow her to whittle down the rest of the group. At some point, though, she got tired of using the iron arrows and decided she was going to switch to her ethereal ones. That appeared to be the last of the riffraff, and now it was time to actually deal with the drunk leader. She assumed at first that the best bet would to be just shoot him from afar. Problem being, even though he was drunk, he had a good eye. He dodged each one of her shots. He wanted her to get close, and in her frustration, she did, sort of. She got closer to him and shot him from the top of a cage. Her shot landed, but then he did something she didn't think he would do. He hid for cover. Clearly, his drunkenness did not affect his combat ability. Again, in frustration, Constantine jumped down to initiate close quarters combat, although she did still plan to use the bow.
I'll get you.
He took a big hit to Ulf, which enraged Constantine even further. She would make this one suffer. She had turned him into a living pincushion and dropped into a knee. When he got back up, Ulf immediately went for the attack. That's when Constantine got an idea. Ulf seemed like he wanted some revenge for that hit, so she let Ulf get it. Truly, he is the best boy, and Constantine absolutely adores him. She meticulously went through the cave, looting anything she could, but finding really nothing of value outside of a few museum items. She used Ulf's pocket dimension to store some of the equipment so she wouldn't get over encumbered. When she finished her looting spree, though, she left the cave, exhausted and truly just ready to go to bed. Frustratingly, though, she wasn't quite done with combat. There were a few stragglers on the ramparts that either didn't care the rest of them were slaughtered or were just so drunk they didn't notice. Problem is, they absolutely noticed Constantine as she turned the corner. She now had to defend herself against 3 people while on a very narrow bridge. Truly, thank the gods for Ulf. In the heat of battle, she heard one of the enemies call out that they yielded. Nope, it's been a long fight, dealing with subpar combatants. You get no mercy from Constantine, and may that arrow send you to whatever afterlife you believe in.
Death is highly overrated.
Now, she was done. Everyone was dead. She looted what she could from the bodies, and seeing no way off the ramparts, she jumped into the water, thinking a little too late that it may have been too shallow. Much to Constantine's gratitude, it was not too shallow, and she was able to leave the cave with no further issues. She was tired, and while she thought about making for Iverstead and then heading back to Whiterun, the leader was dead, and he would still be dead in a day anyways. Constantine instead decided to head out to try to find a camping spot, and she was originally going to plan to camp in front of the cave and lake, but there was a ruin nearby with what looked like mages on it, and not knowing their intentions, it seemed safer to move along. As she did, she came across a bridge and the sound of wolves, though it was very clearly not wolves that attacked her. She had never seen these creatures before, and she bet that they were just some spawn of oblivion. No matter though, she'd put them down anyways and see if anything happened afterwards. Nothing did. She kept hearing snarls and moved up onto the bridge to find not monsters, but people. Alright, well, some people are monsters, and in this case, a carriage driver was being assaulted by a few bandits. In her exhaustion, it took her a moment to recognize who was the threat, but she expertly made them rethink their life decisions.
You won't leave here alive!
And you know what? I can see easily.
Colorful.
The driver seemed grateful enough, but it looked like he was going in the opposite direction and wasn't going to be able to take her to Whiterun.
Need something?
She went to loot the corpses and continue looking for a potential camping spot. She was getting very tired. She finally found a good spot on the top of a ridge that left her pretty well defended. She decided to sit down and get ready to sleep. She'd continue on the next day, maybe deal with those mages first, and then head back to Whiterun. Right now, all she needed was some rest. And with that, this is where we're going to leave Constantine for now. I really liked how this turned out and where the story's going so far. I know it seems like we're taking things slow, and I mean, we are, but it helps flesh out the character a bit more. In any case, if you haven't already, I know every YouTuber asks, but it really does help. Please remember to subscribe so you don't miss any videos, be it this or anything else I do. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye!